meet you all.
Likewise. And yeah, if you just joined us, please, if you could turn on your cameras so that we can all see each other, that would be great. And then we'll get started. Still no takers. That's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our first question tonight, how did you come to Krishna consciousness?
All right, let's see. I have to think how to wrap this up in a short little story. Well, as it says in my bio that I was okay. I'd say my journey began when I was about 6 or 7 years old. My best friend's mother died, and I would lie awake at night wondering where she went. And so, these basic, essential questions that we've all had and that bring us to Krishna consciousness about who am I, where do I come from, and where am I going? I started thinking about this at about age 7. And I just couldn't get it out of my consciousness. I had no answers, definitive answers, and it really bothered me. And I really wanted to know. So I don't know exactly how, but I became sort of obsessed with the idea of going to India and going into the Himalaya mountains and meditating with the yogis. And when I was a teenager, that's what just was like my little my secret private obsession. So, I would get books on India and get books on meditation and try all the different meditation techniques in my room alone, like before dinner. And, any time we got to do a report in school, we got to choose a report. I would choose India, or I would choose Sanskrit, or I would choose meditation. So I feel like my journey started then, but it wasn't until my late teens that I met devotees. It started out in a yoga class. I went to a yoga class with a now very famous yoga teacher in New York. His name is Dharma Mitra. But back then, nobody knew who he was. And so I became his student. And he taught me the Hare Krishna mantra. And he used to talk about the Hare Krishna devotees. And then I was working in I was a vegetarian since a very young age. I was working in a vegetarian cafe, and I met I was a waitress. So, when you go in, I was actually an actress, but I was waiting tables too. So when you go in to place your order, you have to like put the paper up there, and there's the cook. And anyway, it turned out the head cook was a devotee. And so he would light incense, and he would write the special of the day on the board in English and in Sanskrit. And he had these little pictures of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. And I was like, oh my God, who is this person? I couldn't believe it. So he took me to the temple. This was in New York. And that was it. That was it. I just walked in, and I just thought, this is weird, but it feels right. I mean, I did think it was weird, but I felt that the weirdness felt really right to me. And all those questions I had from age 6 or 7, I finally got the answers. So that's kind of what happened. I just met the devotees, and that became the place that I took shelter. And like I told you, I was already really into yoga, and I was into Tai Chi and a lot of spiritual things, really. So this was just, those were the stepping stones, I feel, that brought me to, the absolute truth, to something much richer and deeper. And yeah.
I see. So it's almost like it prepared you so that when you encountered it, you were prepared, like you knew what you were looking for at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I had a real hunger for it.
Mm.
And when I was very young, like maybe 8 or 9, I think some devotees came to our door and gave a Back to Godhead magazine to my mom.
Okay.
Because I just remember seeing that magazine and just thinking it was really cool.
Mm.
And I just was fascinated, mesmerized by it.
Mm.
And then, then a few years, then when I was a teenager, I got to walk the streets of New York by myself, and some devotee came and invited me to the Sunday love feast. And there were all these little pieces to the puzzle.
Mm.
But when I went to the temple and I met the devotees and I heard the kirtan and I saw the deities, that's when it all really clicked for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because I also got in touch with devotees, through the restaurant, and yeah, I mean, visually, it's really striking. Just I thought I knew what yoga was before, connecting with devotees, and then after that, I was like, wow, like it's completely new world, and very very deep tradition beyond just the physical and mental aspect of it. So it was really beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. Similar experience in that way.
Hmm.
Yeah. I tried to keep it really short, but maybe I kept it too short. I don't
No,
know.
it was great. It was great. You mentioned that you were an actress. Is that how you came to be inspired later on to go into film and ultimately
Maybe, maybe. I've always been fascinated by film,
Hmm.
and although my acting was mostly on the stage,
Ah, okay.
it was more theatrical. Some film and television, but mostly it was live theater. But yeah, I've always really been fascinated by the power of media, right? Like, you watch something and you potentially never forget it. It has such an impact, especially in the current culture that we live in. Um, do you want to segue into why and I decided to make that film?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. So I was teaching yoga. I live in Florida with my family, and my daughter at the time was quite young. I think she was 8 or 9. I was teaching yoga, and I would travel around the country, and I would do workshops, seminars, and yoga and pranayam and different things like that, and sharing Krishna consciousness through those workshops and courses. But it just wasn't a sustainable program for me because my daughter was young and my husband also traveled, and it was just really hard to keep the home front going well and organized and efficiently when I was coming and going a lot. So I really wanted to have an impact on the masses in some way, sharing the universal aspects of bhakti, the good parts of bhakti, the beautiful parts, the parts that really speak to your soul, the parts that anybody could say, wow, that's a beautiful tradition, that's a beautiful practice. And so I was just praying about it, really. I just literally was just praying to Krishna all the time. What can I do? What can I do? How can I share bhakti with people without traveling all over? And then, just this idea sort of arrived or manifested about media, something to do with media. So I wasn't sure if I should just do some kind of cool, 10 or 20-minute media presentation on YouTube or Facebook or whatever the outlets were at that time. This was 11 years ago. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but Krishna has his way of arranging everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I met with a young woman named Hillary Tapper, and we met through Skype, and she was a filmmaker, a very young filmmaker. She was at the time 19 or 20. And she actually had a lot of experience making films, and she was on hiatus from college. She was going to college in Belgium, and she was on a long break. She was living in a town near where I live. And we just brainstormed and came up with this idea. I knew, well, here's the thing. You see, I wanted to direct this vision I had, or this idea I had, towards the yoga community, because I felt like I had gotten so much from it.
Mm.
So this idea of giving back, I really wanted to give back because I felt like I actually owed the yoga community everything, because I felt like that was what brought me to Krishna consciousness.
Mm.
And I felt like there were so many people in that community who were just like me, who were searching for the truth and just needed more knowledge and more awareness of the bhakti practice. And also, I don't know what the statistics are now, but at least back then, and it's probably the same now, I think 80% of people who do yoga are women.
Mm.
It's a female dominated field. If you go to a yoga class, there'll be like 10 women and 2 men or something like that. So I thought, let me do something about women and for women, and the tradition of bhakti is so rich about women, and often it's overshadowed. I had done some research as a younger devotee on the historical women in the bhakti tradition, and I thought it was so fascinating. That section didn't quite end up in the film so much, long story, but originally that's how it was going to be. There was going to be the historical women and then the modern women and everything in between. But those vignettes, if you will, didn't work out so well. But anyway, so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on women, and I wanted to focus on the yoga community. Mm-hmm. Not exclusively, but that was my original audience. I intended it for that audience. So so bringing me back to Hillary, who's now Ladini Radha, we just decided to go to India and make a film. So we just came up with the preliminary story and came up with a storyboard, and we had a certain amount of time and a very teeny weeny little budget, and we were dragging my 9-year-old daughter with us and my husband, and it was really a very motley crew, so to speak. but it was amazing. And so we went to all these different places. We got in contact with all these amazing people. Doors started to open and opportunities came about. And there's different ways to make a pot of stew, what we call khichdi, right? If you're familiar with that term. So vegetable stew. So you can look at the recipe book and go and get all the ingredients, and then come home and very meticulously cut your vegetables, make sure you have all the spices and the herbs you need, and follow the recipe. The other way is you open up your fridge, you look in the drawers and see what vegetables you have, look in your cupboard, check out the spices, what kind of dal and rice, and you make that khichdi. So it was, for us, it was the latter. We didn't have the luxury of finances and time and resources to do it the first way. We had to do it the second way. But that was the best way, because that allowed Krishna to really work through us, because we had nothing else to rely on except Krishna. So it was a very mystical and magical experience, really, making that film. Right. Okay. So we did some of the most of the shooting in India. A lot of the interviews were done in America. So that's what led me, what inspired me. I wanted to reach a broader audience. I wanted to share the jewels of Bhakti. I wanted to give back to my community, who I felt had given me so much. And that's what I did. Yeah, that's what I did. And it was very successful at the time. I mean, Krishna played a little trick on me, because the next year, our family decided to move to India. But the film was intended for people in the West. And the idea was to travel around to all of the yoga centers and studios and retreat centers and different venues like that, which we did in the summers when we would come back. In fact, we went to Houston and we went to a few yoga places there one summer. Anyway, so Krishna had a trick, he played a little trick on me. It didn't go quite as I had intended it to, but it did take on a life of its own. And still to this day, some of the prominent people in it, like Jahnava, Harrison, and Rukmini Walker and Gauravani, they'll take it wherever they go and show it and share it and spread it. And anyway, I got sidetracked. I had to look after my family in India and then become I had to do a lot of things there that and the time difference. There were a lot of challenges, but the film was a wonderful experience. And I think it has effect. I will say that when we did go on the tour, several tours, summer tours, wherever we went, we would show the film, and we'd have kirtan and take questions and do questions and answers. Then we'd have a big table in the back with books and t-shirts and beads, and people would just come up and say, "This is amazing. Where can I join? Where can I do this?" But a lot of the towns we went to, in fact, most of them didn't even have temples. So there was nowhere to join or nowhere to go or no card to give out. And we were in a hurry. We had to sort of like pack up and then drive and get to the next town. So we hadn't anticipated, actually, that we would get that kind of response. We weren't prepared for it. So it was quite amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the film. I thought, I think it was very clear, like the intention behind it. When you said you wanted to bring it to, the yoga community in the West, I definitely got that very strongly, because it gave a very relatable and also very, concise impression of what Bhakti was, because I think a lot of people, myself included, I've only been, in this community for like a year and a half. People have a lot of questions. They're like, what is it? Is it, the deities? Is it the temple? All of these kind of artifacts, but the experience of it is something that kind of escapes people. And I think that really came through very clearly in the film. And it was very nice, because it, I would say in some ways, I think, sometimes, people take a more academic or a little bit more kind of like, intellectual approach, as opposed to more of a kind of intuitive approach. And I think the film did that really, really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any plans to go back out on tour with it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Not right now, but
That's fair. What were some of the, how did you see the communities that you were in touch with change as a result of the film? And have you noticed there being, a shift from then to now in the way, the yoga community is contributing, particularly, the women in that community?
I would just say it was more. I think I think what we did was just touch individuals
Mm.
more than groups or communities. And I haven't been able to do any follow up because my life's taken me so many places. So, well, not so many places, but places other than North America.
Mm.
So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't have a pulse on how it's really impacted people's lives, which maybe is the sad thing, because I think it has significantly, but I don't know. I lost touch with knowing.
Mm.
Yeah.
I see. Well, I mean, for me personally, I thought it was a really awesome, introduction, and I think,
Yeah.
especially in this, group, I noticed a lot of the devotees, and I'm really kind of like an observer, um, but they're trying to figure out, how to kind of, I guess, crack the nut, so to speak, in Houston as it relates to like Western preaching, kind of doing exactly what you'd intended with this film. And I don't know that that we found it yet, but I definitely think the focus on media and the focus on kind of like these testimonials, and describing kind of like the experience, can be really helpful in that regard. Because I think a lot of people see like the ritual and the rules, the regular principles, and and I think people will find it easier if they start from an experience in most
Yeah, I agree. I think the rituals and the rules, that comes later.
Mhm.
That comes as a natural byproduct once you've experienced the pleasure and
Mhm.
the joy and the peace that you can get
Mhm.
from the bhakti practice.
Mhm.
So when it's like, um it's like, I'm trying to think of it, like some really cheap piece of pastry that comes in a bag at the 7-Eleven. You think that's yummy, but then when you go to a really fine dining restaurant and they have this beautiful chocolate cheesecake, and you taste that and you're like, oh my God, that ding dong or whatever. I don't know. They used to have things called ding dongs when I was little. I don't know if they have ding dongs anymore.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, whatever then you don't want that anymore.
Mhm.
So I think Krishna consciousness or the practice of bhakti, it's like that beautiful chocolate cheesecake
Mhm.
in that really fine restaurant. But we're attached to the donut even though it tastes so bad. It's familiar. We know what to expect. There's just kind of a taste we've gotten used to. But if you just can get a bite of that beautiful chocolate cheesecake, then it's like, yeah, actually I don't need the donut anymore. I found something better. But you can't do that until you've tasted the cheesecake.
Mhm.
You can't rip the donut out of the person's life if they're used to having that every day. No more donuts. Why? But here, have this instead. Then they think, okay, I can do that. Not the best example, but um, yeah, the rules and all that stuff that comes after. The thing is, like I was saying earlier, when I went to the temple, um, everything was so warming to my heart and beautiful and satisfying, and that it just became so alluring and attracting to me. Right. And the thing that really did it was the devotees. They were kind, they were loving, they were compassionate, they were so knowledgeable. They knew so much, and they took their time to share it with me and speak with me and guide me. So it's like that, we'll start to transform and lose our taste for things that aren't good for us, and want to do more of the things that are good for us, even though it might seem difficult or hard or strict. It'll just happen naturally when we connect with wonderful people and wonderful activities and wonderful festivals and things and food and all the things that Krishna consciousness has to offer. And that's what the film was, giving the best. So we want to make sure we give the best to whomever we come in contact with, the essence.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I noticed, as well, as a newcomer to the temple, was that there seemed to be great care and devotion in all the little details, not just around the deities, not just around, Prabhupada, but just, in the reception of guests, the leaving of prasadam, all these things, even in, the gift shop, people, I remember Mataji there, she explained everything to me, very thoroughly. And it was almost like I would say that there was a very kind of like motherly, quality in a lot of it. And actually a lot of the first devotees I connected with, actually the first devotee I connected with was, were women. Do you think that, or what do you feel is the I guess the style or the contribution that women bring to preaching and into the welcoming of newcomers in the movement today?
Yeah, I think they bring exactly what you said. They bring a kind of warmth and love, a kind of motherly care, a kind of, feminine gentleness and softness and nurturing that, men just don't have. Yeah. I mean, they bring that feminine energy, and the feminine energy really holds the world together. We are, we create the future generation, right? The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So I think women have a very powerful influence in helping raise people up in their spiritual life, encourage them, support them, nurture them. Like you said, it was a woman that you met first, and it made you feel really comfortable, really safe, probably. We don't get threatened by women. They don't have a threatening energy. They have a very loving, gentle energy. And that can be very useful when you're entering a new environment like a temple for your first time. So they play a really important role. I mean, we need mothers, not just our biological mother, but we need lots of women who can look after us and like mothers, in a loving, nurturing sense. So, yeah. Where Prabhupada once said that, women are like the secret weapon of ISKCON.
Definitely, especially when the prasadam is being served. Definitely, that was like, one of the first hooks, and really kind of my introduction to service was around, prasadam. And actually, when this program was at this farm, at the Bhakti Urban Farm, down the street from the temple, kind of that's really how I got to know the organizing team. Everyone was was through the prasadam, and yeah, I just really appreciated the way you know the women on the team just took great care in taking care of everyone. Really regardless of whether they looked like they were kind of what we would consider normal, well-to-do, or whether they were maybe a little bit had a little bit of a rough edge. They were just very kind and very caring.
Right.
Whereas I do think sometimes men, as protectors and administrators more naturally do have kind of like more of their guard up, which has a purpose, but a little bit more challenging to feel invited by that.
Right. It's true. And also another point is that women tend to think more about others and less about themselves.
Mm.
That's why we're so good at being parents. That's why we have the job of being mothers, because it's really easy for us to just think about the kids.
Mm.
And my child comes first and I'm second. You often see women, they're big sacrificers. They sacrifice their comfort, all kinds of needs, all kinds of material needs to make sure that their family, their children, their husbands have it first. And once they know their family has it, then they'll take it. They're the last to eat, the last to go to bed, the last to do this, the last to do that, because they want to make sure everybody else is taken care of first.
Mm.
So it's nice to have them around because we know that they're going to look after us. It's just their innate way of being.
Mm. For sure.
So yeah, that's probably why you felt one of the reasons among the ones that you mentioned too, felt so looked after and cared for.
For sure. And I found that, and this is not to say that, the male devotees, did not also contribute greatly, to bringing me in and educating me, in just, the devotee way of life. And what I did find is that, when, both men and women were able to work together, harmoniously, it actually was a really great formula. There were certain roles that, women were more natural and enjoyed more, in service and in preaching. And there were certain roles that, the men, were more natural in. And it worked together really nicely. One of the things, that had come up, just in general, my readings and things like that, was kind of like the history of, and maybe even some of the controversy, in the history of the movement, with, some, I would say, I won't say inequality, but I guess some conflict or, some, perhaps sexism, within, the devotee community. And I think it's something that's, that's really universal, to not just the Hare Krishna society, but just all parts of society. It's something that everyone's wrestling with. But there's been a lot of progress that's been made. And, in your experience as a marriage counselor and as a relationship counselor, how have you seen that change over time? The way men and women in this movement work together, and how would you guide men who are looking to make that change to work better in whether it's at home or in the community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the way it's changed for the better in ISKCON, we can just start there. is through maturity. That, when the movement started, everybody was very young. And they didn't necessarily know they didn't have the emotional maturity to understand how to apply this very elevated philosophy into their daily practical lives. And so they extracted concepts and ideas and took them out of context and then used them to dominate or put women down or just create an imbalance in the male female ecosystem, which Srila Prabhupada didn't. He gave them more credit than credit was due. For him, it was just, he said Krishna consciousness is 90% common sense. But it seems like they were so young and coming from such a different background, they didn't even have that common sense. So, but, through life's experiences, the people who are now in their 60s and 70s look back and, they've evolved, and a lot of them have come full circle because they've had their own children and they've had to look at what they did and make sure that the same things don't happen to their children, especially their daughters. So I think that's a big thing, is just age and growth and maturity. Also, my husband pointed out that, and this mirrors regular society, that if you look back to society in the 60s and 70s compared to society now, there are way more women in leadership positions in the regular society. And there are way more women in leadership positions in our society, in ISKCON society too. So it's a bit of a reflection of what was going on at that time culturally in regular society also. Secular, non-secular, they kind of mirror each other a little bit. So my husband was pointing out that now in ISKCON, there's so many women leaders, women in different leadership roles, and they're doing phenomenal jobs. So there's no question of ever going back. But it's a lot of it has to do with geographical location, because you could say that ISKCON movement is the oldest. It sounds funny, but it's the oldest in North America, because this is where Prabhupada started, in North America. And then slowly it went to all these other countries. So like North America, parts of Europe, Northern Europe, let's say, is different than Eastern Europe, or even parts of India, or other countries where they're a couple of years, maybe decades behind what North America and parts of Europe have gone through. So what America went through 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, I know that there are other countries going through that now. So there's still a lot of work to do for sure, but it's so much better than it was. Yeah, and that's come with growth and maturity. Absolutely. And spiritual growth and material growth, both. Yeah. Did I answer your question though? What did you actually?
Yes. Yeah, that was great. And I think that's the the sense that I got, especially I think within the Houston community, was I noticed that there was a lot of independence among folks who were just starting in school and starting earlier in their careers, folks who had families, both women and men, all had a service that they could do, and were given a good amount of latitude to do it, within kind of the generally accepted rules and regs. and I found that when that was the case, it was that's when I could actually see, kind of Bhakti and Krishna consciousness being expressed, because you didn't have, anyone subordinate to anyone else. People were very respectful of each other. It was very open, and being from corporate America, I still see a lot of kind of, it's also progressed quite a bit since before my time, but you still see some of it, and even within the yoga community or in spiritual communities, there's you'll see it here and there, and I find that that just represents an opportunity for people, as you said, to kind of mature and grow, and really kind of imbibe the principles of bhakti.
Yes. It's never going to be perfect. It's the material world, and it is an institution, and you're going to have people on the left and people on the right and people in the center, and not everyone's always going to agree.
Mm.
But this idea of unity and diversity, this idea like, we agree to disagree. You may not believe what I believe, but I respect you for it. I have to respect you anyway. Even if I don't agree with you, I still have to respect you because you're a devotee. It's kind of like that. There's always going to be another person that has a different opinion than yours. And, Krishna does that. He puts those people in our lives in front of us to teach us lessons and to teach us to become more tolerant and patient and to look deeper. So it's not always a bad thing if there are other people that think differently and we don't agree, but the goal is to figure out how to work cooperatively together where everybody feels respected.
Absolutely. On that note, for folks, including myself, and really everyone, we're always learning, how to work together, how to, really practice, I think, the things that we read and listen to, in Prabhupada's books, in the lectures and sermons by the Acharyas. What are some of the books or trainings or resources that you would recommend for men and women to kind of support each other in learning how to see and contribute with with equal vision?
Bhagavad Gita, it's all about the soul. And it's all about, seeing the soul and not, focusing on the soul and not the body. So as far as like an ABC, spiritual text, any of Prabhupada's books, if you read them enough, you see how much he's emphasizing the soul, not the body. And that every body has limitations and different bodies have different kinds of limitations. But, we're not meant to focus on that in other people or discriminate against people based on their body. We're meant to encourage them and support them and uplift them. And that's really what we're meant to do. So I think that's what we have to focus on when we're reading Srila Prabhupada's book. That's the thing. If you look for it, you'll see it. It's very interesting. If you look for things that say bad things about this kind of person or that kind of person, you'll find that.
That's true.
But if you look for things that are, uplifting and supportive and positive and encouraging, you'll find that too. So wherever you focus your mind, that's you'll find that, what is the saying? Where I'm not thinking of it now, but whatever you focus on, that's what you'll come up with. If you're driving down the road and you're looking for a red car, you'll see a red car. But if you're not looking for a red car, you'll see white, blue, green. So you have to look for it. So that's there. I mean, I don't know if there's any particular book within our literatures that are specifically geared towards showing men and women how to, see more equality or, improve their relationships. That's just not what our books are about. Our books are really about getting off the bodily platform. They're about transcending, but doing it in a way that's respectful and mature. That's where our work comes in. Our work is to read it and then use our intelligence how to apply it. And I guess one of the best resources would be to, seek guidance and shelter from senior devotees. Those who know, who have read, who have understood, who've been there, who've done that, who have the experience and the knowledge. So if you have a question or you have an issue or something's, go have a one-on-one with them and talk about it and get clear. I mean, there's lots of books out there that are non-devotional books that talk about relationships and, I mean, especially in marriage. But I don't know if the question's directly about marriage. I could give lots of recommendations for that,
Well, I guess, you're reading my mind actually, just generally, what in relationships, and in the work that you do, do you find, or what are some of the ways that you find Krishna consciousness, Bhakti, Prabhupada's books, what are some of the ways that you find that those can be helpful in cultivating, these healthy and mature relationships, whether it's marriage or otherwise?
So I think that, the ultimate thing that I find helpful in Srila Prabhupada's books is that we are all meant to serve. We're servants. We're servants of God and we're service of the other Vaishnavas. And that the cultivation of humility and gentleness is so crucial to becoming an authentic devotee, to making spiritual advancement. And that we should be thinking of ourselves lower than, the straw in the street, right? More humble than a blade of grass. All of these qualities, Lord Chaitanya, who's God himself, taught us. That's how he thought of himself. And he's teaching us that's how we should think of ourselves. Not literally so that we have some kind of inferiority complex, but let's say figuratively, in the sense that that's how we connect with other people in terms of being available for them as their servant. And seeing ourselves very small in relationship, of course, to Krishna, but even very small in relationship to other people in feeling inspired to serve them. So if we can just think of ourselves as humble servants of anybody, and that's anybody, someone you know, someone you don't know, a Vaishnava, a non-Vaishnava, a person in the regular world, a non-devotee, a devotee, then you're automatically going to be treating other people the way they would like to be treated. And if other people feel treated and cared for and respected, then they automatically treat you that way. So again, it's common sense, it's logic, but we as conditioned souls don't generally walk around with that attitude. We have to get knocked in the head several times to remember, oh yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to be a humble, serving individual. That's who I really am. And that's how I'm meant to be in this world. So we go around thinking, we want the world to revolve around our desires.
Mm.
And when it doesn't, we get mad, we get angry, we get upset, we get frustrated. And we want people to meet our needs and fulfill our desires. And when they don't, then again, we get mad, frustrated, angry, and then we think there's something wrong with them. But usually it's just that there's something wrong with us.
Right.
So, I mean, really, if we could just live as humble Vaishnav spiritual souls, then we wouldn't have a lot of these problems. And again, easier said than done. But in any relationship between a husband and a wife, or a parent and a child, if we make the relationship about me, we're always going to be disappointed. Our expectations will never be met. But if we can make the relationship more about them, then our expectations are different. We're more interested in meeting their needs. And so the focus isn't on you anymore, it's on them.
Mm.
And if your happiness is their happiness, then you'll automatically be happy.
Mm. I love that. I mean, it's, I used to really, and I can really relate to this in a work context, but, I'm more naturally a type A, and, so I mean, I can, I like things my way, and I like telling other people, or at least I used to be more like that. I like to think I've grown a little bit. And exactly what you said, when I expected my coworkers to do things a certain way, or expected the results to be at a certain level, and I would get upset, and then it might boil over, and people would distance themselves because no one likes those kinds of vibes. But when I became less attached, when I detached from my concepts and my desires, and really just focused on putting people at ease and just doing the work as it came, my relationships improved dramatically, and the work still got done. The work still got done. It just didn't come at the cost
Right.
of my ego, really.
Right.
So absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. We should put more energy and focus on the relationship,
Mm.
and then everything else will fall into place.
Mm.
At the end of the day, it's not what you did, but how you made people feel.
Mm.
That's how we'll be remembered. Not, oh, he did this, he did that, but oh, he made me feel good. Oh, he was so nice to me.
Mm.
Oh, he remembered my birthday. Oh, he, checked in with me when I was having a hard time. That's so much more important than achievements and getting things done our way. And so I try and remind myself of that every day. Like, what do I want to be remembered for?
Mm.
How do I want people to remember me?
Mm.
And then I try and live the way I would like to be remembered. What does it say on your tombstone? What do you want it to say? And then you have to live that.
Mm.
And it's always about relationships.
Mm.
Always.
Mm.
So with men and women, it's the same. Men, women, it's the same. People want to feel cared for. They want to feel respected. They want to feel like, they're important.
Mm.
They want to feel valued. and acknowledged. Doesn't matter what kind of body we have.
Mhm.
It gets more complicated in intimate relationships, romantic relationships.
Mhm.
You know, that's why they're couples counselors, you know, because it gets, the waters get a little muddier. But there's ways to solve almost any conflict or, you know, gridlock issue. But it's all in how you treat the person, you know, how you make them feel heard and understood. And that can go for any kind of relationship.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, that was my final question for tonight. I'd
Yeah.
like to open it up to our audience if anyone has any questions.
I have a question. Why is it that so many more women are into yoga?
uh, Sarva, do you know the answer to that? Like, you probably know the answer, but you're just asking me.
I mean, women seem more flexible, but I can't really, when I was younger, I was interested in yoga and meditation and stuff like that. And, you know, I don't, yoga is not considered a macho thing, which is maybe part of it. Maybe the general culture is would think of man as feminine or something if he did yoga. I don't know. Maybe that's a subtle.
Yeah. That's interesting because I know one of the things I really loved about yoga when I was really doing heaps of it was that it was a non competitive physical activity. You know, there's no teams, nobody wins, nobody loses. It's just you, me, myself, and I'm just competing with myself. And you know, the practice is that you don't compete. Whatever you can do today is perfect. So we don't think about yesterday, we don't think about tomorrow. There's a lot of presence of mind when you're on the mat. So that's probably true because men tend to be competitive, right? They love they love achieving and conquering and competing. And maybe women don't like to do that as much. These are generalizations, of course. So that makes sense to me. That makes sense a lot. Also, I think men, I mean, especially when they're little, you know, boys, they have so much testosterone, right? So they need to be moving a lot. They need to, you know, just run around and jump and throw things and tackle and score and hit. And yoga is a kind of a passive um, sport, you could say, right? It's not as physically strenuous and there's not as much movement, right? There's a lot about being still and a lot about going in and a lot of restraint and withdrawal, you could say, from the external world and from the senses. So maybe that does appeal a little bit more to women. However, you know, then when you look at the history of yoga, um, you know, Patanjali and Patabi Joyce and BKS Iyengar and all these sort of fathers of, well, Patanjali wasn't a father of modern yoga, but of course, yeah, I guess he was more of a writer than an actual practitioner. But the other ones I mentioned, they're like the fathers of modern yoga. They were all men. And I mentioned my teacher, Dharma Mitra. So I guess it depends, you know, if you want enlightenment or depending on the physicality of your body, you know, what kind of modes you're in. If you're a man in the mode of goodness, then you might be more inclined towards yoga because it's a very sattvic activity. But if you're a man who's in the mode of passion, sitting still, crossing your legs, closing your eyes, and chanting Om is like the furthest thing from your mind, but it's probably what you need the most. And, perhaps that's changing. Like I said, perhaps that's changing. More men are taking to it. Those are some of my thoughts. Perhaps somebody else has some more to add to that.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. First and foremost, I'm so happy to finally be here, be able to learn, and a happy new year to everybody.
Thank you.
My fellow obeisances. Mataji, I wanted to ask role in Bhakti, like women's role in Bhakti, especially like any words of wisdom or experience from, your experience for our children, not just our own kids, but for children in general.
So just repeat the question. I'm not sure I completely get it.
Yeah, my question was that since, the role of women in Bhakti, in Krishna consciousness, that's what we talked about. And, we learned from it. I learned from you. So what else can we add, like as far as nurturing our own children, making sure that, yes.
Yeah, gotcha. So the most important thing to give our children in Krishna consciousness is love and joy. So we want to be very attentive parents to our children, and we want to bring in elements of Krishna consciousness on their level as much as we can. And so they're going to connect Krishna consciousness with love and joy. So fun things, right? Stories and programs at the temple and RT in the house. And, whatever you do, make a way that you can engage your children in that activity that's meaningful and age appropriate for them. And sing songs and do dramas. And, when they're children, it's so natural, right? They don't have all this doubting side or this baggage that they're bringing from before they, met the devotees. And because bhakti is natural, because it's the natural constitutional position of the soul, children just take to it like a fish to water, right? It's just so natural for them. And they just love all the different aspects and activities of Krishna consciousness. So nurture that, just really, really nurture it. Don't be too heavy or too disciplined with them, and don't make them feel bad about anything. And, don't be too strict when they're little. It should just be fun and joyful and loving, and let them know every day that Krishna loves them, and show them different ways that Krishna's present in your life, in your home, when you go out to the park. Just talk about Krishna, ask them questions, get their minds going too. I don't know how old they are, but just really bringing Krishna consciousness into everyday life and making it fun and joyful, and then just give them heaps and heaps of love.
Thank you, Mataji.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions from the audience?
I just have a quick question. It seems like for people in the yoga community to become devotees, it would be good for some devotees to be yoga teachers, sort of make a connection like that.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of devotees I know who have gotten their teacher training with some place somewhere, sometimes with devotee trainings. I know so many devotees who are yoga teachers, so many. And a lot of them are doing exactly what you're saying. They're teaching yoga and they're making devotees. But it's a slow process. So first, you have to get the person to like you and trust you, right? Then you have to really develop a strong relationship. And then you have to slowly introduce the practices and help them see why they're important and valuable and how much value they get from the practices. And you know how it is, all of us, it's taken some time. For some of us, more time, so for some of us less time, but all of us, it's been a slow, gradual process. So we have to be very patient. But yeah, devotees should be in all sectors of society. We could be yoga teachers, we can be doctors and lawyers and car mechanics and whatever there is out there that we can do, we should do it. And we should be really good examples of human beings. Winston, you were asking earlier about how to, be Krishna, how to give Krishna consciousness to others, the men, the women, the men, but it goes so much farther than that. It just means that we have to be really good human beings. The kind of human beings that people are drawn to us, like they meet us or they see us regularly because we're working with them. And they're just wondering, what is it about that Winston? What is it about that Laura or Farsana Rani, that there's something she or he has that's special. They're so patient, so kind. They have a sparkle in their eye, a spring to their step. I mean, literally, we have to go out there and lead with that light from the heart, which is Krishna in the heart, and be that person. And that's really what's going to attract people, like you were saying, Sarvabhauma, like yoga teachers and this and that. We have to be everywhere, including as yoga teachers, and in bringing people in. And that means bringing prasadam to people in the workplace, giving books if we can, teaching them yoga asanas and postures and mantras that are going to bring you whatever it takes. We all have to be up to the task to doing that. And you should think every day is an opportunity. Every day I leave my house, today is an opportunity to come in contact with people and represent Krishna. And what am I going to give to them? What will I leave with them? Will they remember it? And are there opportunities to every day be bringing them a little bit further along, even in a subtle way, with the chocolate chip cookies or the book, or teaching them some little Sanskrit word, or they see a picture of Krishna on your desk, or I don't know, there's myriads of ways. But you can't force. You have to be the best version of yourself, and you have to represent Krishna. And so we have to do that in the yoga workshop, and we have to do it in the workplace, and we have to do it in the grocery store. I had this funny thing where sometimes I'll go to just like Target, just this random store, right? Target. And I'll wear my devotional clothes, not even on purpose, like a kurti and a dupatta like I have on now. And literally every time I go, it's not ever the same person behind the counter. They always comment on my clothes. That is so nice. Where did you get that? I love that. And I'm always with the same friend, and she's just amazed that everywhere we go, we do our Saturday shopping together, our boga shopping, our this shopping. And then every time she's like, you have something? I said, well, it's the clothes. So I have books with me. So I make sure to give out the book, or I'll get them, I'll say, yeah, Hare Krishna or whatever, whatever. So that's minuscule. It's minuscule. But I don't have a job and I don't get to do all that. But if I did, I would think of lots of ways to bring Krishna consciousness into that environment. And again, I am the representative. So yeah, we need lots of people teaching yoga and lots of devotees all out there doing lots of things and sharing Krishna consciousness with people.
Thank you very much. I was thinking of Kesha Bharti Maharaj. He was spending time in Houston, and if he would go to the doctor or go to the computer store, he would always connect with someone and they would think, what an amazing person. And he would tell all these stories, but there's somehow a devotee that's Krishna conscious can really touch people's hearts. And so thank you for that answer.
Welcome. Thank you for the question.
Sounds like we've got some homework to do after this, but it was really inspiring to to hear your take on how we can grow, how we can take what we are learning, whether it's in books, in film, in just association, out into the world and represent Krishna and really do it in a spirit of service to because that's what we're supposed to do, and then also as a result our relationships and everything else around us can improve. So thank you very much, Jahnava Mataji. It was a wonderful class.
You're welcome. I hope everybody got a little something from it.